Welcome everyone to another amazing and exciting class, Saturday Discord class. Today we have Studio Syro in the house talking about behind the scenes of the quantum race. Super excited about the stream, so take it away, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Goro. Hello, welcome everybody. It's an honor to do another Saturday live stream. Really excited for what we have planned for you. We're going to kind of break down the film and tell you all about it within its nooks and crannies. I'm going to give you a quick rundown. My name is Peter. I'm the producer for Studio Syro and I helped produce this film. This was a really exciting piece, one because of just Funi, the story that he was able to pull together, and just all of the exciting ideas that we got to play with, along with all of the technical innovations that we could try to achieve. It was very ambitious at the time when we were taking it on and wanted to do it in its utmost quality. So a quick breakdown of what we're going to talk today. Funi's going to discuss some of the story elements, mainly, what he was able to conjure up in terms of the art, the direction, how we wanted to treat most of the film from beginning to end, and he'll speak to that. And Felix will follow up and discuss more interesting Quill bits that he has learned, tips and tricks of the environment, how that is handled. And Dan will kind of follow him, discuss about the camera and a bit of his directing work, along with then Neek, who will speak to the VFX that he had worked on the film. And closing us will be Nikolad discussing animation and optimization, of course. And then I'll just leave us with a closing statement and we should be good. And with that being said, Funi, would you like to take it away?
I will take it away. Hi, everyone. So, like the previous chapter, the Quantum Race was also inspired by the original Soda Island song, The Quantum Race, written by Arian Cook in 2016. This is the artwork that generated the episode. This episode was created with the intention of being a fast-paced ride into weirdness. After being shrunk into quantum size, we would ride with the teams competing for a prize, the apple pie that we've been following since the first episode, and a cup of soda. The prize for the quantum race winner is a complete breakfast. After introducing Loon with a quiet scene of a morning in the garlic nursery, we continue from where we left at the end of the Neon Jungle episode. The goal of the race is to catch the quantum mine before it's impossible to locate. The racer will fly towards the blue snot generated by a nanotoad dripping nose, shrinking them to quantum size. A descent into matter itself takes us to the synth oasis, where all the lost files are stored, and then to the quantum city, a huge center full of Facebook data. The Star Ride, an homage to a futuristic laserdisc racing game from the 80s, the Escher Temple, another homage to the master of hyperbolic geometry. We are then greeted by digital dolphins before entering the vector pyramid, stripping one dimension away from us and turning the racer into simple shapes, while the fabric of reality is broken down to its simple components. Onto the sound clouds, where the racers are turned into vibration and break free of the skybox. We are now in an empty file, surrounded by assets and Quill interface, and the racers folder enter the Quill timeline and run as frame. While all of this happen, we also follow Silence, who is determined to take the pie for himself. And it will all end up in a giant mess when the pie falls onto the circuit and the race is interrupted by a tsunami of jam. Concept art to final environment. So the goal was we set to achieve with this episode was to explore the quantum world, see how many absurd environments and how fast we could be able to fly in them, all while following and completing the silent story. Music clearly played a fundamental role. The concept of the audio track being the circuit track was the main idea behind the quantum race. And Hans, our composer, did an incredible job going from rhythmic section to a more cinematic style for the scenes that are happening outside the race. We wanted to homage games like Star Ride, Wipeout, and F-Zero, both with the absurdity of the scenery, but also with the music. Being this game from the early 80s and 90s, we decided to write a breakbeat track with an old school sounding style, before genre like techno, drum and bass, and trance could be developed the way they are today. For the concept art to final environment part, which is the one I'm showing now, well, I love doing concept art more than anything. Painting in Photoshop, knowing that your piece will need to be converted into 3D changes the game. I pretend that I'm in Quill even when I'm painting in 2D and imagine how things will look from different angles. This might not appear obvious from the result, but working so much with Quill in the past years completely changed the way I paint in 2D. And for that reason, the style of Soda is relatively easy to translate from 2 to 3 dimension and keep the same exact look. Most scene, as you can see in this slide, the left is the concept art and the right is the Quill file. Most scenes turn out to be pretty much identical to the concept, while others improve in both scale and detail, thanks to all the ideas suggested by the team after the concept art phase was completed. In this case, the Silicon City on the left was just like a faraway shot of this organic city-looking thing, and then, as you can see in the final movie, it became completely different and way more intricate. The same principle applies for the character, especially the crowd that needs to be painted with the smallest amount of polygon, so that we could have a ton of audience cheering and jumping around. We had to separate the rows so we could have 3D characters next to the viewer, but only use flat ones for the rest of them, saving precious poly count we desperately needed for other scenes. I want to address the fact that it's extremely comforting knowing that no matter how complex or intricate an idea is, thanks to everyone's knowledge and of the tools, and especially Nicolad optimization skill, we are going to be able to make it work in the movie and on the quest, no matter what. These are some variation of the ship for Loon. This is the dome layout. That was a very complex task. Felix and myself made many versions of it, and we kept tweaking the geometry to keep it as simple as possible and accommodate hundreds of characters sitting in the rows that shapes the inside of the structure. Onto the character, the racing team. So this was, for me, definitely the best part of the episode. I'm just gonna go quickly through the characters. So on the top left, we have the Garlic Gang, our protagonist and his dad. The Alliance, a cursed bird followed by 3 angels. The Meta Rig, representing the studio and VR technology. The Youngsters, 2 brother youngster controlled by an unidentified flying octopus. Sorry for the logo on top of him. The Arc Array, a rainbow generated by the tears of a glucose cloud refracted against the small sun. The Origami Sep, sharp and adaptable. The Moss Party, a big sense in the mold and a drop of beetroot juice. And the Citrus Corp. These are some concept art that I made before. The idea was to have clearly distinguishable silhouettes and color between the teams, show the variety of life forms that exist on the island and their evolutionary characteristics, play with pre-existing concepts and places, and add new ones like the Meta Rig. On this page, we can also see some rejected ideas like a camel centipede, a tooth decaying spaceship, a pea pod full of peas that they failed the qualification. The Alliance was initially running on a bathtub with rubber ducks. We still kept some of the rubber ducks when we leave the Asher Temple. Loon and his dad were racing on a toy car initially. Loon, in the first story draft, wasn't the protagonist at all, and it was just supposed to sit in the crowd next to the snail and rescue his dad after the apple crash, but eventually became the co-pilot and the protagonist of the episode. Here we can see the evolution of the vehicle of the Alliance. And then I want to quickly talk about some quantum physics pun that we put in the episode. So this scene represents the garage, and these guys are quantum mechanics. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory. This scene represents quantum entanglement. So all racers sharing spatial proximity are linked together, and looking at one of them will affect the quantum state of the other. And these interdimensional vines bind together time and space in a suspended animation. This scene represents the spooky action at a distance, which is a concept that an object can be moved, changed, or affected without being physically touched by another object. So the Alliance plays a really powerful card on his synthesizer, and his angels spook the arc array and are responsible for the temporary disappearance of the rainbow pilot generated by the tears. And then we got this scene, which represents the quantum observer. So the observer plays a fundamental role in quantum physics, as the effect of the observation process affects the quantum measurement. So having broken through the fabric of reality and being in a meta Quill dimension, naturally we needed a scene where we observe the observer observing the race. And then we got the Soda's Devil that represents wasted time, and it makes an appearance next to the Quill timeline, where the time and space are manipulated at the observer will. And then finally we got the quantum mind, which is a conglomerate of theories that aim to explain consciousness. And in the episode, the quantum mind is a consciousness-driven beacon and represent the universal Solian truth. It gets eaten by the snail, turning her single atom cell brain into the most knowledgeable element in the universe. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope you like the episode. Hope you like the first season of Soda. I'm gonna hand it to Felix now, who's gonna discuss environment work and painting technique. Thank you.
Hey, so I want to show some stuff I discovered while working on this episode. So first thing I want to show is just the pyramid. I thought there could be an easier and better way to do this pyramid, and yeah, it's basically just built out of those elements. Let me grab this, get it out. So this is made like with the Jerry technique. So you guys will remember it's just this, and let's take a pyramid. And if you go pretty close, you will get something like this. And I mixed some strokes. It's actually just 4 strokes. So this, and there's another one. And yeah, and this texture was also pretty easy. So just doing a high poly stroke, make a gradient first, then make your inner circle the huges, pick some colors, and then you can go in and do some stuff. Okay, that's that. And the next thing I want to show is this circle. The cool thing about this circle is it's 1 stroke. And yeah, how did I do it? It's actually pretty easy. I guess some of you will already know, but it's just you can paint while you're writing with a transform key, and I will show you how it looks. Yeah, that's on. Okay, we have to select the paint layer. Grab this. Let's take this. A bit darker. And now I can paint. But you have to move your hand, so backwards and forwards to get more precise. And if I don't do this, I will show you later, but you have to move. And how far am I? Oh, I can't see it. Yeah,
So
it's
to be clear, your spawn area is animated, right? Like it's
Yes.
animating in circles.
Yeah, well, this makes me dizzy. Okay, so close your eyes if you do this, if you are motion sick. So yeah, that's the thing. It's just rotation and double rotation, and you can do with this technique many things. Can you see? Can we see where? Yeah, here I stopped moving my hand, so then it's getting less resolution, but it's fine. Yeah, and you can do many things with this technique. I will show you.
When you say you're moving your hand, it's like just wiggle it around a little bit, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
If you do it forwards and backwards, it's going like
It looks better. It looks smoother.
Yeah, it looks
versus-
better because
yeah.
it's going in this
Yeah. So you
space.
move your hand into the direction you're moving versus like sideways, because sideways then you would get like a zigzag effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't hold it like this.
Yeah.
Sideways.
Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, and you can do many things with it. So here I have some examples. Yeah, and the first dome concept art had like this spiral way to go up. I think it's not shown here, but yeah, it was actually possible to do this with these techniques. So you can see it's just one stroke going up. But we changed it afterwards because it was too complicated for each section, and yeah, and so I showed this technique the team, and I guess I discovered it while I'm working on this concept art. So I thought, okay, how can I make this work? So, and it's actually just a vehicle. Oh, sorry. Like a should appear. Oh, there it is. So I put like one spawn area there, painted this thing, and do it again, and paint it on this and this. And this I use this as a guide, and then even it's not in the final film, but yeah, and then I'll use it as a guide and made it work with the grab tool and multiple strokes. Yeah, and I showed it to the team, and then we had like a cool discussion, and we experimented a lot, and then we got an even cooler technique, which he will show you guys now.
Thanks, Felix. And yeah, as you just said, we basically came to the point of figuring out how to actually get the main technique of the camera and also the eraser animation down. Without the technique, the so-called mysterious fly cam, I think the episode really wouldn't have been possible in that way. And so we were kind of crazy to go into this episode making a race in VR without properly knowing how to do it beforehand. But luckily, we found out that technique. So going from what Felix discovered by basically puppeteering a camera through a scene and then painting or painting the track with those transform keys, I actually remembered a little glitch, a Quill glitch that I encountered back when I was doing the Spider-Verse piece, where I actually used transform keys for the first time for camera. And that glitch was just a camera group and a camera inside, as you would usually have it. And you would usually then put the transform keys on the group above the camera, above the spawn area. So you could, just while the recorder runs, you can run this, animate the camera, and then go back, and then the camera is animated. But what happens, and that actually happened when I did Spider-Verse, when you are actually also parented to that to the camera. So your view is locked to the camera. Whoops, to this camera. There we go. And what then happens if you also put transforms on the group above? Well, this happens. So I'm grabbing right now the group as usual, and I puppeteer it, and I have it in my hand. But when you're not careful, you just spin around like crazy. This stuff happens, and that's basically what happened to me back then, a year ago, or 1.5 years ago. And then I was like, well, that's kind of crazy, but I could never use that. But then when we had this discussion of what we could actually use to puppeteer our camera, I was, remembering that, and I was like, well, couldn't I actually, control that? And well, yes, you can. So let me take this. I prepared a little racetrack here on the very last scene of our film. And this is pretty much the exact same principle. This is how every racer was set up. So we have a transform group. We have a few cameras in here. Let me actually show them. So we have like a front, side camera, a cockpit view, like a first-person view, kind of what you would have in our film setup. Cameras that would be, just locked to the cars. But also we have this third-person camera behind the racer. So what is this for? I lock myself to the spawn area of the third person right here. So when I play, I'm behind the race car. I have this toggle, the record toggle enabled. I have this preview spawn area during playback enabled. And then I do the same thing. And with basically my right hand, I grab, as usual, with the grab stick, what's it called? It doesn't matter. The group, and also with my left hand, I kind of put the left hand on my controller to just control a little bit, to stabilize it. So because the slightest movement, I just scale this a little bit up. The slightest movement you do moves the car like crazy. So let me do this now live, and I hope it's not too choppy for you guys. I'm grabbing the car and the camera, and I'm flying through the scene in real time, completely free. I can do barrel rolls, and this actually needs a lot of practice, but if I concentrate, I can very smoothly fly through the scene and actually kind of catch up to those guys. And well, let's race them for one lap. There we go. There we go.
That is insane.
There we go. Let's catch up to the first guy. Can we make it? Can we make it? It was too slow, too slow. Oh my god. Last stitch. Oh god, okay, I crashed.
Amazing.
So you made a...
But there we go. And now I go back, hands-free. And
I made a game inside of Quill.
We made a game inside of Quill. There you go. Hands-free. I can ride my car now. It's a little bit choppy because of the recording, but there we go. And the other cool thing is I can then just casually switch cameras and then watch it from different points of view. And this is definitely useful for your kind of animatic. Oh, this is very fast. For your animatic and just to try a few shots. And and I did this with all of those racers. None of those racers were animated by hand. I'm basically just racing through the set. I'm having fun. This is all also just basically first try. With a little bit of practice, you have full control over it. You could do barrel rolls, or you can do whatever you want.
So I would say, Dan, though, you can do barrel rolls. So basically, like when Dan showed me this for the first time, I was mind blown, and I tried it myself, and holy crap, it can make you puke. Like this is definitely. But also, Dan has an incredible steady hand and the skill level of using this technique. He makes it look easy. But man, like this is an amazing technique, but it definitely needs a lot of practice, and you need a strong stomach for sure.
And I mean, first of all, I'm happy to show you this first. Now you guys can kind of try this. It's the easiest setup you could imagine, and you can try it, see for yourself. You might puke in the beginning, but if you can actually handle it, if you practice it, you can do many crazy things with it. As Felix showed, you could do painterly techniques. You can do crazy movements with the camera and then paint strokes like that. Or if you don't have a steady hand, you don't have to practice, because during production, Quill added those locks here that you could actually lock the rotation. Meaning, I could also take this and with the exact same principle, lock myself to just an empty layer. So right now I call this the drone. And with the rotation locked, I can just grab it, and now I can do crazy movements, but it doesn't rotate, right? I don't do crazy barrel rolls. So now I can do really cool shots like that, like drone shots, camera shots. That kind of choppy recording, but this is pretty cool that you can just freely fly through the scene without having to worry about the rotations. And this is, for example, something, and this is all live right now. And this is something, for example, that I use for the Silicon City, flying above the cars and having to kind of, fly to specific points in the scene. So this is pretty much the same thing you would get with, let's say, like a path, camera path and stuff like that. And
My mind is blown by how well you control the camera. Just now, while talking, you just follow the cars. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, so with a little bit of practice, you can do the craziest things with it. And then also on top of that, right now the camera couldn't rotate because the rotation is locked. But we also put a secondary group beneath for rotation. So you can add rotation just with simple transform keys and interpolation afterwards. And that way we have basically full control over your camera. You don't have to do like crazy groups and the stuff that we did before. Now you can fly freely through the set. I want to quickly show you what you can do if we combine that with the technique Felix just showed. So with the trails that we made for the episode. So I'm locking myself, I'm locking myself to the garlic car, to the third-person garlic car again, and I let this run, and I have an empty layer with empty keyframes on top of it, not parented to anything, and then I grab a color or yellow color here, take a brush, I put this to, let's say, the middle here, the brush duration, and then just do the same thing as Felix just did. And I wiggle my hand slightly while I'm doing my barrel roll. This is all the recorded animation I did before. And just to show it once. And now if I play it back, where is it? Back here. There you go. There's your trail. That's perfectly smooth now, perfectly parented to the animation. And again, with this, you can, I wouldn't know how to do this any other way. And this definitely helped for really cool effects that we did.
That's awesome to see. I was wondering how you did that particular thing, actually.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning of this technique. I think you can really utilize this just at the fly cam as a base for really crazy stuff. I think about a lot of effects you can that are kind of enabled through this technique. And one more thing for this fly cam. Let me go back to a different scene for this. I'm sifting through the master file here. The wrong cameras for this. There we go. This guy is the one that you sit inside pretty much in one of those shots. So let me actually go into camera for this, or main camera. So this is how it looks like in the film. You sit inside of this guy, and there's a slight rotation on top of this. So this again was made with the locked fly cam, so that he's just flying without rotation. And then on top of that, you can give him some rotation by, I have him set up here without, by setting up a new third-person camera, this guy that's behind him, the usual setup. I have myself locked to that. I have a camera below his transformation. And then let me see. Oh, actually, yeah, I have the camera that I'm locked to above the camera, above the folder. I'm gonna add transform keys to. So this is the camera. This is not parented to this folder, and I'm gonna transform on this one. And this time with rotation enabled, but with transform disabled. And that way, I have this guy in front of me, and I can then do this. I can basically do like a look at constraint or something. So that's I can, awesome. Again, in real time, rotate him around, puppeteer him. And you could do this freehand, you can puppeteer him going left and right. But this is basically just for rotation. And the pivot has to be in the center for this one. So there you go. This is basically the basic principles of the fly cam. And I'm going to go into much more depth with this, and also more camera and also editing techniques in another Saturday presentation in, I think, like 3 weeks. So if you want to know more, yeah, come back to that one. I'm quickly going to show you a couple more interesting scenes, a few more insights on some of the editing I did. Let me go back into the main camera for this one. There you go. And this shot, for example, right there, we fly through his eye into the next scene. And what I did here looks kind of strange, but this is basically what happened. We fly towards his eye in the previous shot, and then we end up in this sort of tunnel to sort of merge those two scenes and make it seem a little bit more seamless. And there you can see the trails once again. One more thing, this one, my favorite transition, where we have the car coming in front of the camera for this shot. So let's look at it from the side, very quick. Where's the camera? It's there. There's the camera. So the car comes in. There you go. And then this car is the actual car that we see in the next one. This is the same car, a little bit scaled, that the camera is scaled. And this is just parented to the camera photo, so that we get the movement from the camera and also the movement of the car that then goes into the next shot right here and then stops. So that's why this looks just very smooth. And at some point we just delete the car from the previous shot when it's blocked. All right. The next one. And the last one. This was pretty tricky to do. Very technical, but what I had to do here is going from the temple set. This is the Escher temple, the so-called one. And I had to go from here with the camera movement and also doors opening in front of you back into the arena. And so that's how this looks like. And what I had to do here is, again, looking at it from the side, at some point, at some specific frame, I turned off the Escher temple. And then basically duplicated those gates, this tunnel, into the arena, which is somewhere in the scene. There it is, so it's just very small. So we have the same tunnel in the arena now, and the camera is still moving forward through the tunnels, but in a different transformation, just because the scale is a little bit different here. So I had to then move the tunnel backwards to match the forward movement from before, and also move the camera forwards towards the into the arena. So a little bit technical, but kind of tricky to find out. But again, you're basically transformed from one frame to the other into a different scene, but you don't see it at all, and it's just as smooth as it can be. So there you go. That was my craziness that I had to go through in this episode.
Damn. Awesome.
That's so cool.
Thanks for the craziness that I had to go through, and now the craziness that Neek had to go through with his effects.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Okay, cool. I'm going to share my screen.
All right, you're good to go.
It's me. Cool.
Oh.
Hey, everybody. This is a shout out to Jonathan for, coming out with the marching band stuff. This is the best I could do, man. Like some kitties everywhere. This is my touch. But hey, guys, I'm Neek. I do the VFX for us. Really, when I say like I do the VFX, it's not to take away from anybody's skill set, because like the team is literally just a bunch of really cool generalists at what they do, but then they come in and specialize for like one little thing just to kind of like put it on their back and see what they can do with it. So I basically take on the VFX for the team. So I thought I'd show you guys what I did for the pie scene. I'm huge fan of like the other ones that like we put into the film, like the that vector scene that breaks into the empty canvas, or the Quill scene, and then comes out from that. One of my favorite scenes, but the pie is probably going to be one of the things that I feel like I can it has a nice conglomeration of all the little bits and things that I whipped up for the past few episodes. So let's go check that out. So, okay, let me put the headset on. All right, so you guys can see what I'm seeing, right?
Yes.
We're good? Great. Okay, perfect. So, so as always, whenever we start off any of these episodes, it always begins with the beautiful concept art that Funi puts down. Sorry, I'm trying to work my cable.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's always interesting because his storyboards are like color first rather than just like like black and white outline drawings. So you get a lot of like interesting information out the gates. Your color profiles, ideas for how things are going to work. Like he's already thinking about how he wants the explosion to turn out, and what kind of looks the jelly's going to look, color palette, insanity, etc. So we go from this point, and then we always start off with our blocked out animatics. So I think Dan, as of right now, he's been doing a lot of the blocking and stuff, but now we're kind of moving into helping him because like I said, we're all generous. So like now we're trying to see how we can kind of like work with each other's loads. But this is the first thing we got, was like about 3 frames and a general sense of meteor pie is going to come and sploot into the scene, right? So working with this information, it turns into kind of like a trust fall situation between the teammates to like start filling in the gaps, right? So with that, I'm already thinking like, okay, I love seeing explosions in cartoons. I love seeing epic things in like TV content. So I'm already scratching my head thinking like, all right, well, obviously we have to play with scale. Like, this thing's coming down. We want it to kind of like be something that just, comes down on us with, the force of like 1,000,000 tons, right? And that was because when the pie breaks through the quantum bubble, it came in as like it's 1-to-1 scale. So this thing's coming down like a meteor on us. So we had to develop some of those color palette situations. So here's some kind of like early designs of like the Jello, a little bit of this early pie. But in the end, we actually these things kind of get changed because the more we refine, the more we fill in these gaps of information that we don't know yet, the more we kind of get closer. Sorry, I keep smacking my microphone. I hope you guys aren't getting like weird pops and hits and stuff. But yeah, so once we get closer to that area, like once we're finally finalizing, a lot of these things are getting their like color treatments and stuff. So you go from burger patty meteor to pie, right? So now one of the cool things that, well, actually one of the coolest like things that I started off doing in the beginning was these airwakes. And this is stuff that you'll see in the Neon Jungle and in the Multiverse Bakery. It's just the use of like a transform keyed thing so that it's nice and it has like a beautiful ripple and stuff. And yeah, and so you get this like when you bake these things, you get to work with like really clean information rather than just going like, okay, and grow it and grow it and grow it and then grow it just a little less, grow it a little less. Rather than going by hand, you can kind of like put your trust into the transform key touch. So so that when you go from so that when you start from the first frame and the end frame, it's nice and clean. But so going into these sets, what I'm doing there is basically, let me go over to show all. So I'm basically going into the show all like keyframe, show all keyframes mode, and then when I'm messing around in here, I'm basically putting in random little thicknesses to kind of create those little sensations that like when it passes through time, little cloud billows will start to form as it like edges towards the outside. So you get these like really interesting wakes on stuff. Here, we'll just start to randomize it because I'm kind of being a little gentle. But here, let's put a big chunky one there, and then and then you get one that essentially billows in random areas. Refine, salt to taste, and then you basically would duplicate this 3 times and then offset it so that they start at different times, and then that would essentially kind of create this like looping sequence with perfect keyframes, and then the final one, I essentially would be just grabbing the whole thing and then put a little bend to it. You know, reach toward the center, pull from the center, and there you go. Oh, wait, hold on. You have to do to you have to do to the whole set. My bad. So, and then hold it there. Okay, hopefully, there you go. Perfect. Awesome. And that's kind of the things that you guys might have seen in a lot of other streams. It's how I applied it to that one. But so much more you guys can do with it. You know, welcome you all to try. You know, think about the you know, the VFX at hand. See how you can weave all these things in, and usually it's gonna, like, you know, be your jail out of free card. It's and it's fun. It's a lot of experimentation. So one of the cool things that I did for the quantum mind is actually, this one surfaced from something called Phyllotaxis. You can see a couple examples of this here. It is one of the coolest things that we found in like our R&D stage for me personally, because it's just, oh my God, it's so fascinating. Like, setting this up in Quill is really, really awesome. And it's awesome because of the explanation behind it. So John Edmark is some IRL sculpture, like stop motion artist that basically uses math and like Fibonacci sequences and a bunch of things to plug into his art. And this is one of the things that he likes to experiment, which is Phyllotaxis. And what it essentially is that, like, when you essentially nest a rotating thing, say this is like, say that this first segment is like the plate inside of a microwave, and it's sitting on a wheel, right? This thing is essentially rotating at one speed, but then the plate that's on top is really using nothing more than the same mechanics of the first one. The thing is that because it's nested on top of something, it's receiving a ×2 speed. So in Quill terms, this folder, the folder that is this group, is essentially going at like you know, a rotational value of like 1 times, and then the next one up is ×2. So you essentially, you know, have these here, let's select one so you can kind of see what it looks like in a folder. Yeah, it's a little funky right now because it's essentially this. I would essentially create one unit nested with the same keys and the same influence, and then keep nesting it inside of stuff, and then you get these kind of things. Really cool. And that's how you end up getting stuff like this, is my little Lazy Susan, you know, like goo stream or something like that. And the reason why it's called a Lazy Susan is because that's what the plate is called in a microwave. So now you know. This is the Lazy Susan technique, if you will. But yeah, cool thing that happens here. And then when I'm doing other stuff in the film, like I like this so much that I use it in other things. So in the Quantum Mind, you'll see it sometimes, but it has this kind of like this weird glow where, you know, it's just it was kind of like meant to show like a little bit of a blur touch to it. And all I'm really doing there is I'm grabbing probably like sorry, it's gonna be a little tough to like kind of sift it out from the others, but I'm grabbing the core one, and then here, let me oops. All right. So I'm basically grabbing the core one and then softly jiggling it. And the reason why I wrote soft grip there is that if you guys know, you can basically hard press the trigger like all the way through, and you get this 1-to-1 motion, right? But if you soft grip it just a little bit, you get this like almost like this lurked feel. It's doing things with transform keys. Doing this is such a satisfying feel. It's actually how I did the molecules in the other film in Neon Jungle, and man, it's so satisfying. So for this one, what I essentially did was just do like little soft rotations, and then take that animation and then Lazy Susan it, and then what happens is that the surrounding the after images essentially have the previous folder's influences. So it kind of like slinkies out in a way, like in certain, like, you know, I guess like parabolic like movements and stuff. Pretty fun.
But
And
to understand correctly, basically you have the same keyframes, but because they're nested, they inherit the previous transform, and then you create that offset through that, right?
exactly. Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, right. And
They're not offset there, right? I didn't see the offset on
not on this one. Not on this one. Yeah, because the thing is, and neither for this one either. The thing is that what's happening is you're playing all of these at the exact same time. So if here, I'll do like I guess like a quick, you know, little diagram. So say this thing moves over here, and this is its like velocity, right?
Yeah.
And then if you essentially nest this inside of itself, this velocity is going to have the previous velocity kind of on a ×2 factor. So this one will end up over here.
Yeah, they multiply the
exactly.
The speed, yeah.
Double translation.
Right. So it'll essentially just be like
that's so like interesting.
That. Right, and you get this really interesting like slingshot effect from it, and you know that just compounds with every single move. Pretty fun, and it all came from just looking up a YouTube video about this guy and his like really cool zeotrope. So it's like, dude, probably one of the best you know, like pulls from R&D that I've gotten. But if you guys want to look it up, his name is John Edmark. He does these other really beautiful things called blooms that I think you could definitely, well, man, I feel sad because it was the last thing I tried to get into this file. I'll show you, I'll put a GIF of it in the chat later so you guys can see what it looks like, but they're called blooms. And basically, because it follows all of this and he does a lot of stuff with Fibonacci, 3D shapes essentially do this really beautiful effect without having a visual. I guess I can't go deeper into it, but just know it's cool. But anyways, that's Phylotaxis. And then take all of this and you've really got all of the building parts for doing basically the next animation. Sorry, I know this is like 1, 2, here's the owl, but that's essentially what happened. So once we get to the file. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
No, yeah, it was funny because the thing that I'm just doing right now is also filing my taxes. So Phylotaxis is a very appropriate name for.
I just typed that in panel type chat. What the heck, Danielle?
Funny.
There is a guy.
I didn't read it. Sorry, Tyler. I stole your joke. Sorry. I didn't read it.
There's a character doing his tax return in the episode, actually.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. Oh man, that's funny. I'm glad we have that mutual pain. But so okay, so now on to baking. You know, pun fully intended. When you have all these things kind of nested in this like really beefy folder, you've got so many different transform keys, so many different anim brush stuff. Like each one of these. All right, now we're getting a little crazy in here. So. Once I got to this point, all of these things I transform keyed. So this nested folder had the goo on its own layer. It had these little bits on its own layer. You know, each one of them, I wanted to have the smoothness of the transfer key, like interpolation. But you have to, if you're going to do stuff like that, you have to remember to bake. Like and you have to plan for that. For those watching, I know like you'll be seeing the recording later, refer to Nick's previous videos on all this stuff. Every single thing that he says is exactly what needs to be done so that you can have so many different like complex elements all layered and stacked on top of each other. And then bada bing, you get, you know, your full explosion. Final bits that you're seeing there, that is essentially actually from more previous episodes. So like, you know, more of those transform keys, more of the like, you know, scaling, opacity, all that stuff. Yeah, man, transform keys all the way. And then you can go in and do your own custom, like, you know, moves to it. So like all these bits, kind of like I warped them a little bit just to give it a little bit more organic feel. But yeah. And that is the general look at how most of these little parts and pieces all make their way into this type of setup. I could go a lot further into like, you know, how many different stages I tried to accordion them all, but that's the full scope of it right there. One last thing, and this is now me rounding up my section. I want to show you guys one last trick. This one's pretty awesome. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So let's put it on my hand. Hold on, it's just kind of bumping into stuff. Okay, cool. So say you're working on you know, I guess like a piece of geometry. 1 second. Wait, can I draw? Yeah, okay, cool. So say you're drawing a piece of geometry and it's like really, it's a really long custom triangle type of situation. If you guys remember, you can, in the last stream, I mentioned WASD, like using WASD to move around. And if I ever want to keep the exact same brush size, but I'm super far away from my model, I kind of tend to use the keys to kind of just, you know, extend it really, really, really far in case I need that type of edge. Here, and then you can kind of like lower yourself a little bit. And that's how I'll get like a custom line to without really worrying about like, oh no, I really need to reach all the way over here, but I have to go all the way yonder, right? Like if you can't do that, just go over to your keyboard and just bring yourself over there. And that's a really clean way of doing it. And final note, in case you guys want to, you know, do this is a little secret hack. I'm about to give you a Neek exclusive right here. If you want to, basically bring your new layer folder all the way, hold on, right there. Underneath this, there we go. You want to bring your new layer folder all the way to your workspace. Hold on, we're gonna have to. You can do that right there.
What?
Wait.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a hacker. I don't know if I told you guys this, but I've basically been able to do some secret. Okay, no, I'm messing around. I don't want to get in trouble.
Oh no, I know.
You almost had me there.
This is my This is my next level workspace. We've got this, we've got that, and now you can paint. Now you can paint.
That was genius.
Now you can paint while you do stuff. There you go.
Almost
You're welcome, everybody.
there. I'm like, what?
We just got we got pranked.
We got
Neek, you're
No,
banned.
now we can totally see what you meant with you kind of fooled your team as well, right? With this.
Right? Yeah, I
He
had
pranked
to.
us on that one, so yeah, he got us first.
Well, that's
you can
amazing.
show this to the you can show this to the Quill team. I'm having
Yeah.
this problem.
Yeah. There you go.
Smoothly.
Yeah, that's what he did. That's what
What?
he did. I have this problem, and we were like, wow, wait, how could that happen? How? Let's ask briefly on that one.
So
Yeah.
is it all like literally? Man, that's a lot of work, right? To paint this whole thing.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, okay.
You guys,
Oh my
you
God.
guys have some very talented artists on hand who spent their time doing this. Doing it by hand was pretty brutal. But
So
yeah, now,
coming back to what you did with the line with the WASD, right? Are you basically your left hand uses snap, but what you're doing is like you're driving as far as you want, and then you hold the Alt trigger to snap again, or how? Because otherwise
yeah,
you have to hold both, right?
Ooh, okay, yeah, it's a little tricky because you do have to, with your left hand, hold the index, and then now that your line is essentially kind of holding in place, if I let go, so right now I'm holding my right index, now I'm pressing my left index, I basically have to, with two controllers, with one hand, hold both of those triggers with one hand, and then I lift my mask, look for my keyboard. Okay, cool. And then, all right, and I'm pressing W right now. So there's something special about the orientation, of like how you're oriented in the scene. But you can fix that with like, the other keys. Press Q and E to kind of go up and down. But I'll use this especially for essentially this, right? Like I wanted to get like right down to the wire on like where this lines up. I let go of my one of the triggers, and then bam, now it's rendered.
Okay, but
And
in theory, you can actually just do that freehand. Like you use the W key, and once you reach the point where you want to stop, then you use the snap trigger. That should work too, right?
Well, yeah. So like I could do it without doing the keys. So here's the thing. It's very hard, and I have to basically go room scale. So say I want to add a little bit, just a little teeny thing, because sometimes Quill just gets like that, right? Especially if you're doing stuff like that.
But
you basically
brush
right. Right. So now I've gotten it down. I'm literally down to the wire. I'm all the way here. I'm like, oh, hold on. Let's get even closer. Yeah. Bam. Right. And then I'm like, man, now I got to go literally to the neighbor's house to go get to that other side. Psych. You just got to press the keys and then wait a bit. But this is basically my like the surefire way that you're going to get the right hit on like the ends of a stroke. You know, like you'll know that you'll end it right where you need it to be. So it'll take a bit, but this is the way. This is the way. So
This is the way.
This is the way.
There you go. I didn't get far at all, but you know that's just to illustrate the point of like what you can do with that. But there you go, and that's my section. Thank you, everybody.
Perfect. Awesome.
Thank you. So cool. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go next. I'm going to talk a bit about animation and then some optimization on this episode. So just okay. So in this slide, just to kind of explain, in this episode, it was interesting because, like you saw with Dan's flycam technique, we kind of blocked out the entire film with our transform keys before we had done our frame-by-frame animation. And the difficulty with that is it's actually very hard to animate something that's already moving through the scene, because if you go to that frame, like let's say you're going to do this character animation here, if I was to advance a frame, the character would basically leave my field of view. You don't follow the character as they animate. Even if you put a camera, it doesn't lock you into that group. And we could have, in some scenes like this one, maybe animated the background to move, but not the characters, so they're actually static. And we do that in a couple shots, but for the most part, it's characters flying through the sets, and they have to then animate on top of that. So the trick to doing that is really just, let's say you go to frame 1 of this sequence, you move the character out of the transform group, animate them completely static, and then as long as you put them back into the transform group on the exact same frame you took them out of, they'll go back in and they'll lock back into their transform. So that's the trick we use to kind of animate characters moving, using frame-by-frame animation, basically layered with the transform animation. Can you go to the next frame? Great. So when it comes to optimization on this film, we had a few different techniques that we used that were unique to this film. One of them was that when I got the characters from Funi, I noticed that they were very high on the draw call layer level, and also like there's a lot of triangles because they were pretty high resolution. They were painted with so many little details like pores and like feathers and details, and so that was too much. So to keep the amount that the erasers took up to a minimum, and this is because in most scenes, all racers are in almost every shot. So with all the characters that together with their heavy cars, it was just a lot of triangles. So we painted really low res versions of each character. And if you go to the next slide, Funi, we also had low res versions of each car. And the idea here was originally each character was, say, like 3 draw calls, and their cars were like 3 or 4 draw calls. So each character took up, let's say, about 8 with their effects and everything, which was just a little bit too heavy. So with all 8 racers at the same time, it took up basically our entire film. So these, what you're looking at here, are the 1 draw call versions of the characters, where they were basically repainted and merged to just be like a single draw call. So all 8 racers together were just 8 draw calls, which was very, very manageable. And so these are used for shots where the racers are kind of far away. And the closer you get, we had basically 3 versions of each one, kind of LODs.
So up close, you'd have the ones you saw before where they were, really crisp and lots of detail, and there was a cockpit inside and everything. And then when they kind of go away, we have like a mid-tier one, which was basically looked the same but didn't have the cockpit. And then you have these ones, which were just when they were basically, a few feet away from you, and you're not really paying attention to them. They're not hooked to the shot. We go to these really low ones, and that helped because some of the scenes were very elaborate on their own without any bracers in it. So just keeping the bracers to a minimum helped us make really elaborate environment scenes.
Nick, you became a little bit muffled just now, your voice. I don't know if you changed anything, but
No, I don't know why.
now it's better.
Okay. I was just saying that we use different racers for different distances, basically, kind of like what video games will do. So for this I'm just showing that basically we had these very elaborate, huge sets, like for instance the arena, and we wanted to cut back to that set multiple times throughout the film. So the way we did that was, rather than duplicate the arena set multiple times, especially in some cases, the arena lasted, just a few seconds. So the arena with all of its audience members and all of its like streamers and birds and clouds, and there was so much detail. What we decided to do was basically just open and close the span for the arena group. So you can see here, it's open and closed, like closed, and then a little while later we open it up and then close it, then open it. And if you go to the next frame, the next slide, Funi, you can see that you can basically do that just by hitting the open and close bracket. It's not something that's super important on most projects, but a project as large as this one, where you want to kind of save everything you can, duplicating the arena 5 times would have taken up probably the entire project. So by doing it this way, it doesn't eat up memory more than it does the first time. It basically saves you a lot. Can you go to the next? Yeah. So our skyboxes, we use a lot of skyboxes in the films, and the skyboxes can really be kind of a blessing and a curse. On one hand, they save you a lot of kind of triangles, and they're, you can replace a background with a skybox, and in a lot of cases, people won't notice. But the problem is that the skyboxes are actually, they can be very, very heavy, especially the default one in Quill. If you just snap a screenshot and replace your background with a Quill skybox, default right now for the skyboxes, I think it might be a bug, but they come in at about 8K resolution. And if you don't notice that, an 8K skybox in Quill takes up like 1/15 of your total project. So if we had a skybox in every scene, that would have already been too much for the entire film. Like, it would never have gone on the quest. So if you're going to use skyboxes, you have to remember to make them light. And one way you can make them light is kind of what you see here. So it doesn't look like much, but on the left is actually a 1 pixel by 2048 pixel skybox with a gradient. Sorry, like a texture with a gradient. But if you turn a 1 pixel strip into a 360 image, it actually makes you a perfect gradient sphere. And it's so much lighter than actually using a like a full square with a full gradient on it. You can get the same result with just 1 pixel. So that 1 pixel image on the left is the skybox for the image, for the sphere you see on the right there. So that's how we kind of kept their skies light. This is just a trick for our supplemental content. So if you were to watch our behind the scenes of the garage, you'd see that we actually have kind of 2 scenes that you can switch between. You have the garage where you can kind of meet the characters and see learn a little bit about each one. And then we also had a cockpit view where you can click and get kind of a first person view of what it's like inside their ship. And as you can tell, it looks completely different. So if you go to the next slide, what we basically do is we have 2 scenes next to each other, and there's a camera in this scene, and then there's a camera in the side-by-side scene. And you never really notice this when you're in Quill because it's completely blocked off, but it's an easy way to kind of to have basically 2 scenes in one, as long as you can afford it. So we couldn't have the whole film in different scenes like this because the individual scenes are too large, but for something like this, it's totally possible and a really good way to do your kind of behind the scenes content. And I think that's it.
Before we just jump into Q&A, I just want to speak to a couple things. Hi, everybody. Peter again. I wanted to talk just a little bit about producing this project and everything that we went through for it. I think, obviously, as you can all tell, based on the level of quality of work here and the well of information that we were able to share, that, there was a lot of exciting factors, and it was very fun to work on this film. Big, Funi creating this type of world, and bringing all these ideas to the table. It's really easy to get away with, or at least get carried away with coming up with so many ambitious ideas, and that's what really happened at the very beginning of all of this. We were extremely ambitious for what we wanted to achieve, and we have a tendency of getting a little ahead of ourselves because we don't really want to build too many constraints, but then we also have, the technical constraints that we like to push, which ultimately lead to very interesting innovations, like, the camera techniques or the VFX techniques, or even just optimization in its entirety. And that spawns from our ambition and the creativity that goes towards this project, whether it be, world building or, a technical side, which is, more or less why we're here, because there are so many interesting aspects of Quill and how they can be applied in a proper way. I will say, though, in terms of a creative project, this was very difficult. There was a lot of hard work that went into this, and there was moments of doubt in regards to there's points in production where you can do something technically because you are able to do it, but then there's problem solving. And problem solving has sometimes a finicky timeline. So as a producer, I'm scheduling things to be done in a certain amount of time. And it's within my understanding of the technical ability of my team. And then also the creative aspect of us finishing an idea so that we can at least pull it together. And I think it's important that, no matter how well you plan to do a project, there's going to be, an unexpected timeline for how long something's going to take. And it's also, that's just an aspect with every type of creative project. But even so, the team here being as talented as they are, when we come to a problem that, is somewhat impassable, or just that we're not familiar with at first, it can become very frustrating because we're coming close to the ceiling that we didn't properly prepare for, but now here we are, and now we have to figure out a way around it. And I think that's also what makes this team so strong, because of our ability to do so and to take things as far as we can. And so I want to congratulate those here that, for what was accomplished with this film and what we were able to do in that amount of time. Because that being said, we were coming from another 2 productions, the other 2 episodes. And so we're, at the end of the year, seasonal changes, things are slowing down, things get very difficult. So it's really important to keep in mind the balance of a project, especially when, the energy starts to slow down and the year is coming to a close. It was a little difficult, and you become a little unsure of yourself, but you have to just remember that all of your hard work is going towards, what you set yourself out to do originally. And so we were unsure in some cases of how things how the film would work, if people would become too nauseous, if we were uncertain about the motion. But ultimately, all of those concerns that we had, went away, and it ended up being one of our strongest pieces yet. And that is what it really empowers us and encourages us, alongside all of the work that goes towards Quill, whether it be technical, but then also everything that this community is also providing as well, because it's very encouraging to see what everyone is creating, and then that empowers us to do ultimately what we love to do. And it's really cool because then you get to see this mixture of talent and passionate people coming together to perform in such a way. And I just want to send out some thank yous to, of course, Quill and Ryan, and also some of the other members of the team that aren't here with us today, like Hans Edenroth. He is the music producer for the film. He did a remarkable job. He goes underneath the alias of Grin Parrot. He has you can look him up on SoundCloud. I'm pretty sure we can link him just so you guys can be familiar with, his amazing music. And he did an incredible job with the soundtrack and some of the sound effects. And also Joe Mawson, which is Refrac. He was the main producer on our last film, Neon Jungle. He came in and he helped with the sound effects, and they both did a remarkable job. And so I just want to give a big shout out to them. And I wish, they were here, but the discussion of music alone is always a fundamental piece in all this, and I never want to shy away. I wish we could talk more about it, but know that the back and forth between the team on all various ideas were so spectacular and incredible for ultimately what we came with, with the sounds, the music within all pieces of the film. And then I also want to give a small thank you to our developer, our Studio Syro developer, Nick Saunders, because he's with us through our ups and downs with this project, and he's also helping us develop really interesting things on the side that really encourage and build the morale for the team. And also his input when we're discussing things as a group is always really important. And finally, once again, thank you to everybody here. Thank you for checking out the stream today. We hope that it was, very inspiring and encouraging for everyone to do your work moving forward. So thank you.
Amen to that. It's all about taking risks and failing and learning from it. We're jumping straight into QA. I think we're at time, but I hope you guys have time to take some questions.
Yeah, I think we have some time. That's why we're here.
So, Big David's asking, did you folks get it in within your initial timeline?
Did we get it in within our initial timeline? Yes.
I guess scheduling-wise, yeah.
Yeah, we did get it in. I always build in some headroom. I build in probably an unnecessary amount of headroom, and I apply a lot of pressure for us to get things done on time, but then at a certain quality bar. Yes, we got done, I would say about a week before or 2 weeks before our kind of official timeline, because that amount of time, that 2 week span is primarily for polish and optimization and anything else. There's a process that happens at the end of the film where it either be me, Funi, Dan, if he's not, entirely exhausted, and Nick, who are meticulously going through the film and adjusting the smallest details, because we know that it'll keep us up at night, even if you will never see it ultimately. But yes, we did come in underneath our timeline.
And how long was the entire production?
The entire production was 4 months. So
incredible.
3.5. So it's September, October, November, and then half of December.
Nice. Peter Marks is asking, how are you guys doing user testing? Speaking of motion sickness and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, friends and family. We just subject them to our thing. It's interesting.
No, it's tough.
Yeah, it's really hard. Because we all vary in the team based on our ability to handle VR in certain ways. Like I think I'm a little bit more sensitive than most. I'm not as sensitive as Dan. Dan's extremely sensitive, as you could tell from his camera work. But I think that it's we just wanted to be really all-inclusive in terms of how we prefaced it at the beginning of the film. Like, be careful of motion sickness, because there was a lot more movement, and because some of our cuts. But yes, mainly a lot of internal testing with the team, and then various friends and family that we could work with right now.
Cool, thanks. Rosenbear is asking, hey all, you guys really pushed the bounds of what's possible in VR storytelling for me. There's been an acceleration between episodes in how boldly you moved the camera and made cuts. Could you talk about that journey, and if you've surprised yourself with what's possible in VR movies, and if you've been inspired by any other VR projects?
Yeah. Well, I guess that's on me, because I'm responsible for the craziness that is the camera. Well, obviously we surprised ourselves going into this series, but also basically starting with VR. I was under the impression that you cannot cut in VR. Everybody said it, and how would you even do that? And I was just going in with the Multiverse Bakery and said, like, I think when we go up with the camera and we just move something in front of the camera, we can just do hidden cuts like that and just transport the viewer or teleport the viewer without the viewer really knowing. And those could be cool moments to play with. And we went from there and just added bits and then just came up with techniques. And with the positive feedback, we just, pushed it further and further. And those hidden cuts became our thing. And obviously moving the camera kind of slowly and gradually, more and more with Neon Jungle. Even with Neon Jungle, I was under the impression that's way too nausea inducing. That's too much movement. But then we went all in with this episode, and especially the tricky thing with Quantum Race wasn't necessarily the fast action bits, but actually going from a fast camera movement back to the static arena and just back and forth, the whole back and forth cutting and those two storylines, happening at the same time. That was actually pretty tricky to do and to handle, and always control the gaze of the viewer, looking left and right, up and down, and always, directing for that. That's definitely a challenge, but since we've done it now for a whole year, we learned with every project, and we're pushing further and further. But obviously, currently, I would say this is pretty much the peak where I would like to go with this with Multiverse Bakery.
Yeah, same.
That's the peak that we reached, and we want to find more interesting ways of not necessarily having to move the camera too much, and just just do different kinds of hidden cuts and just different kinds of camera techniques.
So peak in terms of camera movement, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
because I have to say, like I told you guys also before, but this was definitely one of the projects that I could not watch twice, like in a row, because after, like, I definitely got some cold sweats and stuff, but it's worth the cold sweats, right? That's what I like about this. Is like, I don't care if I feel a little bit, motion sick. It's you're in for the ride, and if I go into a roller coaster ride, I might come out puking as well, and but I still had a good time, and I look at it like that. It felt like a really wild roller coaster ride, by far not as violent as some Six Flags roller coasters, So I think this was like a really cool way to really push the boundaries, and like I'm glad you guys did this, because I like to watch it over and over again, just maybe not like binge watch it multiple times in a row.
Yeah, I have. Sorry, I just want to interject real quick, because like there's definitely something that like I think is really key with this whole motion sickness thing, is something that like we may, it's like the more we do these pieces, the more we kind of play with that threshold. This one definitely skirted right on the line, went over a few times, but like I too had a couple troubles with it too. But the thing is that like there's still a way where you can do even more intense motions. But it's about how sustained it is, and how like what sustained versus short burst. Like have you guys seen Dan Pache's like Salt Bay? Like in that piece, Dan zips the camera around like tons, right? Yeah. So it's all about like creating stomachable, like digestible iterations of it, and then like making sure that you're keeping a track of like how many, like how back to back it is. And I think if you keep in mind with all that stuff, you can still skirt the line kind of intelligently. Granted, our film was literally a race, so it was almost impossible to like not do those shots. I think that's why Dan and everybody was thinking like, okay, let's just go from the race, go back to the stadium, go back to the race, go back to the stadium. You get me? So it was like there's rest points. So like very quintessential there. Yeah.
I have a question about that. Do you guys check any movies that go about races? Like any movies that, and see how they use the camera in a traditional way, like how they go back and forth between being inside of the cockpit and then outside of the
that's a good question. Dan, so Roma, basically asked basically about that, right? Like when we were in R&D, this is what we discovered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So basically, the animatic that I edited was meant to be completely in 2D, just usual 2D storyboards, and some of it was, if I correctly remember, but most of it in the race was just film scenes edited together, like Redline, the anime that's very cool and then very innovative in terms of like just racing, action stuff. And a couple of, I don't know, Star Wars and whatever, like random pieces cut together and to convey that motion and kind of the story points we want to convey in the race, which definitely helped in finding cool techniques. But I mean, it gave us a starting point, but well, going into VR, we realized, just quick cuts, into a cockpit and then outside and whoa, there's an explosion and whatever. That's, still very tricky to do. So we then, throughout the film, kind of moved more towards the longer shots. And, if you think about the tempo shot, just very more slow shots that keep you in the scene rather than having to quickly cut back and forth, which would have been added to the motion would have been too much, I believe. So, and I quickly want to talk to the last part of your question there. If we've been inspired by other VR projects, I personally wasn't really actually, and if I were, I kind of wouldn't have done it. I think because, as I said, I went into this and into VR in general, thinking from having seen other VR projects that it isn't really possible to edit in VR. And I think there's this thing. I don't know it in English, but it says everybody said it couldn't be done, and then there came one and didn't know that and just did it. So that, I guess, was what happened with me in this case, that I haven't watched too many VR stuff beforehand and in that kind of direction. So I just did what I thought was cool, and it somehow worked. And
well, that's not to say that we haven't seen the films, though, right? Like we've surveyed every single Quill Theater piece, and that's definitely something that does happen. Like,
yeah, sure. But in terms of VR projects outside of Quill Theater, yeah, I think if I had watched everything, I would have gone into this saying like, "Oh, that's impossible to do."
Yeah, and I think there's nothing out there with a VR race or something like that. I don't think there's any.
Games, right? Yeah, it's more
anything else. I think there's anything else like it. So you guys kind of came. You had to like start from scratch or be the pioneers on this. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's just reference for just camera motion. That's the best. That does exist in like some of the pieces we've seen, but that's really all you can work with is like how did that feel, and then we tried with it, right? But yeah, just I want to toss that same question over to Funi because like Roma was asking about like R&D and like the character designs and all that stuff. Like Funi, where what's up with your brain, dude?
I mean, to answer the same question, yeah, obviously, starting the season with a bakery, the plot, the episode, the idea was much simpler because we didn't really know what we could cram into the quest. So the first episode was just about this guy baking a cake, and then we realized that we could put way more than we initially thought in the episode. So the second one was already far bigger in scope, and we were wondering, would people become sick if we make them travel? We drag them through space rather than having a stationary point of view, and hopefully that worked. And the Neon Jungle was, it works. We all loved working on it. It came out pretty good. So knowing that, naturally the idea of turning the third episode into a crazy race, it was like, yeah, it felt natural to get to that point. But yeah, as previously mentioned, I guess that's the limit for now. Because not everyone was able to to experience it without feeling sick. We had a long debate whether to include the word sickness at the start to warn people. I didn't want the word sickness, so we we changed it to fast paced.
Did you guys think about like a vignette or something like that?
We did think about vignettes. We discussed whether we wanted action lines, like in anime. Yeah, we went through many options, but yeah, we kind of have to.
I mean, it's still very comfortable to watch. Honestly, like for me, the sickness kicked in after watching it usually, you know. So I'm like very like consumed with it. I have adrenaline. It's super cool. And then I went back to working, and then 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I don't feel too good. It was not that bad, but definitely it affected me. But not during watching it. Like I think you guys really were able to keep it like very level, but like it's almost like the body can't catch up with the excitement, and then afterwards it's like, oh, it's coming.
Not sure how it works because I am super sensitive to motion sickness in VR games like roller coasters and stuff like that. But in this episode, I had no problem. Like I watched this so many times.
You had enough soda.
So much soda running through our veins.
I guess I actually, starting with VR, I actually practiced my motion sickness. I played games that I think there was a thing like Fly Car or something, just a game where you can just Air Car, yeah, where you can just randomly fly through a city like Blade Runner. And I just did a lot of barrel rolls and loopings and stuff like that, and just trained myself to never have any motion sickness. And I actually never have if I just sit down and stuff. So I guess that was a little bit of a negative on this one because I just did my crazy things and didn't really care, and other people had more problems. But I think talking about vignettes, I definitely try to put in a lot more like natural vignettes, like the cockpit shots. Just putting something to the left and right and just to the sides of the viewer, so that the majority of the motion is more in front of you. And kind of, if you are in a cockpit and stuff is quickly coming towards you, it's the motion, like in the shot actually, is a little bit less if it's just in your field of view in front of you than if it's on the sides. If things rush by you on your left and right, then that feeling of motion is much heavier. So if you block off those, either with vignettes or just with a cockpit, for example, that's going to make it a bit easier on the viewer. But I thought trying out some versions of vignettes that, with the setup that we have, with the viewer's like point of view, or the vignette of the vignette not being able to be locked to the head of the viewer, for example. That way, a vignette would feel very weird, just a very unnatural thing to see. So we're trying to just ground the viewer with more natural ways to design the sets in a way that it makes it easier.
It works really well. And I think in VR, specifically, like the worst motions are pivoting, right? Like rotating the like around your own y-axis. That's like usually the worst. And then orbiting, if you make it too fast, or if you don't have a point of interest, orbiting can also be super nauseating. But I think you guys kept it mostly like, if you're like pivoting, then you have at least like the cockpit in front of you where you're grounded. And if you're like outside of it, you kept it more like very long pans, right? Which is like much more comfortable. So I think you guys found like a really, really good middle ground there. Because I think there's like a lot of mistakes to be made in terms of like fly cams, right, in VR. So
yeah. So I mean, you guys know the secret now. You know the fly cam, but don't overdo it. And again, maybe come back in 3 weeks where I go more into depth and we can discuss more things you can do with this, or more kind of motion with VR kind of techniques. Yeah, I think
Dan is talking about his he will have his own Saturday class, so that's gonna be exciting, and that's coming up at the end of the month.
Yeah, and talking about the what did I want to say? Oh yeah, just something that I want to just point out basically every time, that it's very important, not only on these like action shots we sometimes do, but also in general for the story to always just control or have some sense of control to where the viewer should look at, to have something in the frame that the viewer is focusing on, and then if you want to cut, if you want to do a hard cut into a new scene, that gaze is properly carried over into the next shot, and the viewer doesn't get teleported into a new scene and doesn't know where to look at. So I think that's very important to do, and that definitely helps our way of cinematography. And it's challenging to do with every shot, but yeah, I think it's just very important. Keep the viewer just grounded in your story and not kind of feel the less of immersion within a cut.
Cool.
I think that's all with the questions that we have. So thank you guys so much for another amazing class. This was really cool with a lot of tricks and insights. Super exciting. That moment with Neek was especially funny. Like, he almost had me there for one moment. I was like, what? Oh, damn. And that's like knowing that you did that trick before, right? So
I know.
that was a pretty impressively painted timeline.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next week we have Roxandra, who's going to show us how to create Quill environments for VR chat, and that's going to be exciting. So
cool.
Thank you guys, Studio Syro, for this, and thanks for your time, and congrats to another amazing VR piece.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Studio Syro.
We love you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You guys are amazing.
Bye, guys.